Hello and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard video. Today's video is not a tactics video. It's a reflection video, an analysis video. This video today is going to be all about why are guards struggling in today's meta. Why are guards struggling in today's rules edition? Because I say it a lot. You know, I'll say it once, I'll say it again. If you are starting out Warhammer 40k and you choose Imperial Guard, be ready for a rough ride. Be ready to lose plenty of games. Especially if you're going against people who use armies like Eldar or Tau. Those are the two biggies, you know. To a lesser extent now, Necrons and Space Marines, but they're still really powerful. And I always say to you, I can't promise you victory, but I can help you give your opponent a bloody nose. Help you make them respect the guard again. And it's important to understand why we can only really give our opponents a bloody nose. Why we will just struggle against some armies. And why we, without impossible luck, physically cannot win against certain armies. And I know a lot of people say in 40k, you can always win. There's always a way. It's like, statistically speaking, we take statistics v statistics. There are some matchups that guard cannot physically win. One of them being, for example, when someone takes 9 Riptides and some Storm Surges in a completely legal list. You know, we just can't beat that without heavily list tailoring. Without heavily list tailoring. Our take all comers lists can't beat something like that. And so it's important to understand why guard are struggling. And this is going to be kind of a stream of consciousness video, maybe a bit of a ramble, but hopefully it will, you know, I don't want it to be a negative video, but hopefully it will provide some of you with an idea of maybe why you're struggling. You know, maybe you got into guard 6 months ago, a year ago, you've played plenty of games, but your win-loss ratio isn't great, and you're kind of wondering, is it me? Is it my fault? Or maybe you're wondering, you know, I'm listening to all of the Mordian Glory videos and I'm still struggling, you know, despite the fact that the advice in those is absolutely amazing. I'm plugging my own content. Anyway, you know, jokes aside, you may be honestly a little bit disheartened, and I'm here to tell you now, it's not 100% your fault. If you're playing against a friend who just likes to take 3 Riptides plus, you know, 3 plus Riptides to say, or 3 Riptides plus his whole army, and you're getting your face smashed in time and time again, it's not necessarily your fault. You know, there's things you can do to mitigate it, which is the point of these videos, and there are ways of, you know, trying to secure victory, but it's not necessarily your fault if you're finding it to be a steep learning curve. That's what I want to say, number one, because, you know, guard are not a top tier codex, not on our own. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's have a look. You know, what is the issue? Well, number one problem is we don't have access to any monstrous creatures. Let's just accept this fact now. 6th edition, and to a greater extent, I should say, 7th edition, monstrous creatures are king. They are vastly superior to vehicles. Vastly superior. And Games Workshop at the moment has a tendency to release units that quite obviously should be vehicles, and they're releasing them as monstrous creatures. The Tau Riptide being a classic example. You know, the Wraith Knight being a classic example. The Wraith Lord being, to a lesser extent, a classic example. You know, and it's so we don't have access to monstrous creatures. But why are monstrous creatures so powerful, I hear you ask? Why, you know, surely a tank can just like run over a monstrous creature. And, well, unfortunately 40k doesn't quite work like that. But why are monstrous creatures so powerful in comparison to vehicles? Well, monstrous creatures, generally speaking, are quite fast. A lot of them have jetpacks, or a lot of them have wings of some variety. Most monstrous creatures, the competitive ones, can either fly or move really quickly. They're also not slowed by terrain, so even if they're just stomping along on foot, they're still getting a good distance. nothing stops them. So they're maneuverable, and in the day and age of everything scoring and formations being everywhere, that allows monster creatures to contest most objectives that they come across. Very few people take a CAD, and those that do take a combined arms attachment, often, we're talking about not just guard players, but in general, most of them that do treat the troop section as a tax, because everything can score. So you don't necessarily need troops anymore, which is sad. So monster creatures are fast. And I don't want this video to be why a monster creature is great video. It's just an aspect of it. Second reason why monster creatures are great. They operate at full capacity until the very last wound is dropped. Okay, let's take this. Let's compare monster creatures versus a squad versus a Leman Russ, which is obviously our big thing, and versus a big infantry blob. Okay, so let's say you have a Riptide, bare bones. I think it's about 195 points, and that's going against a slightly tooled up Leman Russ. Maybe it's a Demolisher. Okay, if a Riptide. Well, number one, a Riptide has 5 wounds, and Leman Russ Demolisher, and most vehicles only have 3 wounds / hull points, so they have more life. Also, if a monstrous creature takes a wound, it has an armor save, and vehicles don't have an armor save. You have an armor value, which makes you relatively immune to small arms fire, but if someone does some damage to you, there's no way you can stop it. There's no safety barrier, whereas monstrous creatures universally have a 2 or 3 up save. Some flying ones have 4 ups, but the vast majority have 2 and 3 up saves, which means that even if you overwhelm their relatively high toughness, between toughness 6 and toughness 8, which provides them a certain immunity to small arms fire, a certain level of it, even if you do manage to get wounds them, a lot of the time they can save it. Imagine if every time you were going to take a glancing hit or a penetrating hit on one of your vehicles, instead you got to roll a dice, and on a 3 up, it went away. On a 2 up, it goes away. That's amazing, isn't it? That's incredible. Imagine if you had that ability on your vehicles. That's why monster creatures are good. Also, if they take a wound, that's it. They've taken a wound. Their guns still fire at full capability. They can't lose a gun. A vehicle, if you get through onto the vehicle damage table, 1 out of 4 of those options, your vehicle will not be able to shoot properly next turn. You'll be snap shooting. 1 out of 4. Sorry, 1 to 4, which means there's a 66% chance when someone does some damage on the vehicle damage chart against your vehicle. Bit of a weird sentence that. There's a 66% chance that your vehicle is out of the game for a turn. That's crazy. Or is it, no, sorry, a 50% chance. 1 to 2, and then 3, and then 4, 5, and 6. No, I'm right. No, because 4, 1 to 3 is the one where you snap shoot. 4 is the one where you snap shoot and can't move. 5 is weapon destroy. 6 is immobilized, and 7 is I was right. So there's a 66% chance that your vehicle's fucked, and then the last 2 remaining options, either your mobility is completely fucked or your weapons are completely fucked. You either have weapon destroyed or you're immobilized. Monster creatures don't have that. So that's a broad brush. And for some reason, monster creatures are grossly undercosted. I know a lot of Tyranid players are raising their hands at this point. Apart from, even though Tyranids are meant to be the monster creature faction, Riptides, Wraith Knights, stuff like that, they're generally considered to be undercosted. Okay. So guard, we don't have access to any monstrous creatures. And if you notice, I was doing 2 things at once. I was comparing monstrous creatures. I was pointing out the good thing about monstrous creatures, and I was pointing out the bad thing about vehicles. Guess what? Guard are the faction known for tanks. So what I'm telling you today is your army is well known for having units which are considered inferior to everyone else's big heavy hitters. That's frustrating, isn't it? Your tanks, your armoured behemoths are considered not as good as a walking robot suit. That's unfortunate. So, where we draw our big firepower from is not very good, unfortunately. So that's what we don't have. But some of you may be saying, Space Marines do not have access to monsters creatures. Yet they are, and Necrons, apart from the Nightbringer, which is considered a subpar choice, let me remind you, Necrons do not have access to monsters creatures, or giant monsters creatures. Yet these two factions are considered very powerful. Pray tell me why they are not considered low tier. Well, I shall tell you. If you don't have access to monsters creatures, at least in those two factions, you have access to ways of killing monsters creatures easily. For example, Space Marines get Grav, Necrons get Gauze. Gauze is great. Gauze on a 6, you do a wound. No questions asked. Wraith Knight comes barreling down you. Hello to, you know, all my Gauze shots, because my entire army has Gauze, basically. Gauze is back on the rise, by the way. It used to be Tesla in the old Necron Codex. Now it's back to Gauze. So yeah, so one, we don't have access to the big stompy monster creatures, and two, we don't have access to ways of killing the big stompy monster creatures. You know, traditionally things like plasma guns and demolisher cannons would have been our go-to weapons, but plasma guns for us are very expensive to field in large numbers, and we're forced to field them in large numbers because our guys only hit half the time, and we don't have access to grav guns and demolisher cannons, which used to also be good ways of killing big stompy things. Now, monster creatures get access to cover saves. There's really easy ways of boosting your cover save, so even if the demolisher does do some damage, there's a good chance, you know, 50 to 60% chance it's not even going to make it through the cover. I know that's been errated in FAQ, but still an issue. It's still a lot easier for a monster creature to generally get a cover save than a vehicle. And also, even if you do some damage, guess what? You only do one wound. So, guard, that's the double reason why guard are fucked on that front. That's the double reason. One, we don't have access to monster creatures, and two, we don't have access to easy ways of killing monster creatures. So if you're facing an army which uses those, like Eldar or Tau, you're going to struggle. Okay? The next thing I want to say is we're kind of slow in a rule set where, you know, Maelstrom of War, where you have Maelstrom of War, where it's just all about fast, rapid flowing gameplay. You know, get on objective 1, get objective 2, do this amount of damage, blah, blah, blah. Your objectives shifting and changing every turn. We don't have the speed to fulfill most of these objectives. Our basic transport is neither fast. It's not neither fast. It's just not fast. You know, if you want your Chimera to go anywhere faster than 6 inches, be prepared for the occupants and the Chimera itself to not be able to fire. You know, your tank's going to go 6 inches a turn. We have access to Hellhounds, yes, but Hellhounds are good. Don't get me wrong, I like my Hellhounds, but, and this leads me on to the next point, so we're not maneuverable to take advantage of Maelstrom. Moves me on to my next point, which is we're not that cheap. We're a horde army, and we can field whole armies of tanks or whole armies of infantry and have lots and lots, but we ain't that cheap. 125 points for a Hellhound. Okay, you tell me if a Hellhound, let's be fair, shall we? No, because it's a take all comers unit. Let's say the Devil Dog, the one with the melter cannon, take all comers unit, you know. Let's say, you know, it's got a melter cannon, which is small blast, that can help against hordes. It's at strength 8, AP1, it can do vehicles. You tell me if that, which is 135 points, you say if one of those can do 2/3 the amount of damage that a Riptide can do. Nope. I know it's cheaper, it's about 60 points cheaper, but let's say, okay, let's up the stakes. Can 2 Devil Dogs, is it Devil Dog? Yeah, Bane Wolf's the chem cannon. Can 2 Devil Dogs which is more, you know, 270 points. So we're looking at 75 points more than a Riptide. Could two of those do the same damage and be as durable as a Riptide, for example? No. Could three of 270 points? Well, only 25 points more, and you've got yourself a Wraith Knight. But let's up the stakes some more. Could 3 Devil Dogs kill a Wraith Knight? No. So that comes to my next issue with the Guard. We ain't that cheap. We are, I would argue, a balanced codex. We are appropriately costed. Nothing in our army is super expensive, but nothing in our army is super cheap. And I would argue that our codex is pretty good in terms of internal balance. One, you can swap out a Beowulf for a Hellhound, swap out a Devil Dog for a Vendetta, or a Hellhound for a Valkyrie, and they're all fairly internally balanced. You know, Scout Sentinels as well. You know, infantry squads can balance well against veteran squads. Veteran squads can compare well against stormtrooper squads. The codex is internally balanced, but that means we are punished for being a fair codex. We're not OP. We're not cheesy. We're not bullshit. So we ain't that cheap and we're a balanced force. That's another reason why you may be struggling. Okay, another point. And again, this is not me bashing. This is just me pointing out issues that the Guard are suffering with at the moment. I love my Guard. You know I do. But I have to be honest that we've got some shortcomings. Another issue is, you know, we ain't that cheap. We ain't that maneuverable. And we ain't got many formations. I mean, we have some in the Montcar book. We'll receive some love in there, I will admit. Okay. But before the Montcar supplement, what other books do we have? There's one, the Red War, Steel Host. And there's only 2 formations in there. Both of them are okay. But one of them is for Bullgrins. And I know I've done a video on this recently where I said it was a good formation. It is a good formation, but Bullgrins are still, you know. And another one's for tanks. We've already discussed why tanks are sort of struggling this edition. So we got some more in the Montcar book, but a lot of them are trash. Unfortunately, you know, there's some real stinkers in there, and there's some that they're okay, but none of them are great. So if I go through, and I've got a few more of these I want to do, but like the Emperor Shield Infantry Company, it's good. It's a good formation. It's powerful, but it's got a downside, which is no objective secured. So it makes it that tough question is, are any of our formations better than a CAD? The Emperor's Talon Recon Company, well, do people want to take a minimum of 6 Sentinels? Is that realistic? You know, people have had the option of taking 6 Sentinels for, 9 Sentinels for a while. Are they really gonna, start getting really enthusiastic about a formation? I mean, the formation gives you some stuff, but it's not amazing. You know, the Emperor's Blade Assault Company, it's all right, it's okay, but let's take a look at it. You get preferred enemy to enemies within 6 inches of an objective marker. Okay, but why don't we compare that to the Tau formation, which is the equivalent of it? I bet you didn't realise there was a Tau formation that's the same as that's the comparison to the Emperor's Blade Assault Company. Let's have a look, right? So it's the same. You have 1 Pathfinder team, and then 3 teams of Fire Warriors in Devilfishes. And guess what? The Emperor Assault Company, 3 units, and some transports. It's very similar, very similar. I've done a video on it, so if you want more detail, go and have a look at it. But guess what? We get preferred enemy, but the Tau, they get reroll to hit, just flat out rerolls to hit. And their weapons are so high strength, they don't really need rerolls to wound. So I would argue that's better. Oh, and all their vehicles, when they arrive from reserve, they're all fast. Which that means, oh look, my Devilfish is going to speed onto the board and go 30 inches. Oh, guess what? This is Maelstrom. So that's a really big fucking deal. You see what I mean? That's clearly better than the Emperor's Blade Assault Company. Clearly better. You know, it's just, that's the issue. We have formations. Now we have formations, but not many of them are very good. There's one or two. I'd say out of all the formations we have 3 which are okay to good. 1, Emperor's Shield Infantry Company. 2, Emperor's Fist Armored Company. 3, Psychian Division. The others are all middling to just absolute god-awful shite. It's not good, So, in a day and age where formations rule and are king, many Imperial Guard players are coming to the battlefield with a combined arms attachment, and we lack those bonuses and those special rules that other armies get. And that leads me on to my next point, and I'm going to wrap it up after this next point. My next point is this, and it's leading on from my last one, which is we don't have a lot of special rules. Think about it. Think about other armies out there. Think about the bonuses they get. I remember when I first played against the most recent Elder Codex, and my jaw was hitting the floor because this guy, every single unit has a special rule. Every single one. It shoots and it moves, but then it has a special rule on top of all that. So, for example, warp spiders. And I know warp spiders are very powerful, but they're described as being fast and maneuverable. It's like, okay, cool. They have a jetpack to resemble that, so they're jetpack infantry. Cool. Oh, but on top of that, they get the flicker jump thing. Oh, so they're breaking the rules. That's the issue with Guard. We don't have any special rules. We have to stick. And I think this is what I'd like to argue this is almost my most important point, because this is an issue that we've got addition to addition to addition. Okay. We don't have any special rules. And what special rules allow you to do is break the normal convention. It's to essentially cheat. That's what special rules allow you to do. If you have a set of rules like 40k, which is movement phase, shooting phase, and assault phase, you move in one, you shoot in the other, and you assault in the final one. If you have special rules that allow you to move in the movement phase, but then also move and shoot in the shooting phase, aka battle focus, and then also move again in the assault phase, aka flicker jump, or jump shoot jump, for example, with jetpack infantry, then you're cheating. You're moving 3 times. Imagine if a pawn could do that in chess. Imagine if a pawn had for some random reason, a supplement to chess came out, and this guy who uses the supplement or rules update for chess, and suddenly, because he's got the update and his opponent doesn't, because the opponent hasn't been updated for 2 years, 3 years almost with the current Guard Codex, his pawns can now take unit and move. Imagine if they could do that. You'd be screwed. The pawns be destroying you. And that's the issue that Guard have. We have to play by the rules. We have, any time that we want to try and break the rules, there's a barrier in the way. So, for example, if we want to move and shoot, we have to pass a leadership check. We have ways of passing that leadership check, or ensuring that it goes off, but we have to spend points on that. It's not built into our unit's costs. Do you understand what this comes back to the last point, which is we're not that cheap. So if you don't, if you take a few squads of Imperial Guardsmen, those Guardsmen can only move in the movement phase. They can only shoot in the shooting phase. They can only assault in the assault phase. They can't do movement and then movement and shooting and then movement and assaulting. They can't do any of that. When they assault, they don't have Hammer of Wrath. They don't have Rage or Furious Charge or anything like that. They have their attacks. And I'm not necessarily asking for the Guard to suddenly get loads and loads of special rules like that. But what I am asking for is potentially that some of the other armies need toning down. Because they are essentially breaking. They are breaking the rules. Other armies essentially play outside of the rule set, whereas the Imperial Guard don't. We are forced to play within the rules set. And I honestly think that's our biggest issue at the moment. So, just to do a quick summary, a quick recap, too long didn't listen, shall we say. Imperial Guard are struggling these days, even though we are a shooting army in what is argued to be a shooting meta. We are struggling these days because we don't have access to monstrous creatures. We don't have ways of killing monstrous creatures. We aren't that cheap. We have to pay for things like special rules. If we want our guardsmen to be fearless, we have to pay for that. Whereas a lot of other armies, don't. For example, Space Marines, they show no fear. That's just built into their special rule. And we don't have all the brand new toys that other armies have. We don't have all the fancy formations. So we're essentially trying to take a combined arms attachment which gives us no damage output benefits. That's the key question there. No damage output benefits versus formations such as Riptide Wing, which allows the opponent to shoot 4 times in one turn. That's crazy. So that's essentially what it comes down to. And we're not particularly mobile. Now, I think I've done another video on this or if I haven't put it up yet, I will do. I have another video recorded on. It's my Imperial Guard wish list. I think it's 3 or 4 things that I want the Guard to get back from the old Codex and other things that I want being added in. And I think it's a good video because it highlights the issues that Guard have and ways that I've kind of thought about getting over those issues. So, brave commanders of the Imperial Guard who fight valiantly, do not worry. Whilst we must fight the good fight and do the uphill battle, you can confidently say to yourself, if you gave your opponent a bloody nose, if at any point your opponent wasn't all cool, started having to check his codex, check special rules, shaky hands, sweating, if you have made your opponent, if you made an Elder player do that, if you made a Tau player do that, then congratulations, you won that game. That's what it comes down to. You won that game. If you had a Tau player on the ropes, if he had to take a step back and think about how he was going to counter you, you've had him on the ropes. That wasn't an easy game for him. And even better, if you win against a Tau player, if you win against an Elder player, if you win against Space Marines or Necrons, then I salute you. I'm not saying they're impossible to beat, but we all know they're tough to beat. And if you do beat them, then that victory will be so sweet. A lot of Imperial Guard players will be able to agree with me when I say this. Some of your best battles are not the ones where you curb stomped your opponent's orcs. Not the one where you destroyed the enemy Tyranids. They're the one when some bastard said, let's have a friendly game, and turns up with a Gladius. A pimped out Gladius. And you fight the good fight. You put everything you have into it, and you win. You destroy his transports. You kill those sons of bitch Space Marines. And he was expecting an easy win. And you destroyed him. Or you clawed a victory just. Those are the battles you remember. Those are the battles which are your favourites. When you beat the odds. And they're the ones that we should all aim for. But anyway, enough of my ramblings, enough of my inspirational speaking. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If anyone has any other reasons why you think Guard are struggling or ways around the issues that I've pointed out, then please let me know. Leave a comment. Because obviously I will have missed some things out and I'm perfectly aware of that. I just didn't want the video to overrun too much. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.